Okay, so in this episode we're going to make a set of low poly trees, and we're going to explore the proportional editing tool in order to make a few different variations of them. Okay, so we've got our file here. I've deleted the default objects, cleared everything out, and renamed the default collection 1 as trees. Make sure that's selected in your scene collection browser up here in the upper right so that any objects that we add will be added to that collection automatically. So we want to go to add, and we're going to go mesh, choose a cylinder, and we want to change the vertices to 6. That's going to make the top face a hexagon. So let's move in here. Hit period on the numpad, and that'll snap you to the object there. And we're going to go into edit mode by hitting the tab key on the keyboard. So now what we want to do is hit the 1 on the keyboard. That's going to snap us into the front view. And now we're going to hit the move tool, and you want to hold control on your keyboard. And then you're going to move the mesh up until the bottom of the mesh is aligned with that red line. By holding control, that's going to snap you to the intersection points on the grid and make it so that you can very easily move at a precise distance like that. What this is going to do is it's going to put the pivot point at the base of the object so that when we scale it up in object mode, that's going to be where we scale from. So if you hit tab on the keyboard and go back into object mode and then hit S on the keyboard, then as you see when you scale it, the base of our object sort of stays on the x-axis like that. If you hit escape, that'll cancel out any transform that you're doing. We're going to hit S to scale, and we're just going to bring that down and make it a little bit smaller. We don't want it to be 2 meters across. That's a little big. So let's make it about like that. And if you go up here into the item tab, pull this out over here, you can see the sort of stats on your object. And you can also adjust the sizing on it over here, the dimensions there if you like. You can see here we have about a 1/2 meter diameter object. So we're going to tab into edit mode, and then we want to put a few loop cuts in our object. So over here on the left, you're going to hit the loop cut, and then hover over your object, and you'll see a yellow line added where it's going to add the cut. So just go ahead and put a cut through like that, and then in the options panel here, which you might have to expand if it's down like this, you're going to up that and just put, say, yeah, 2 cuts is going to be good enough, maybe 3. Let's do 3 cuts. That looks good. And now we want to go into the face select up here, and then choose one of these transforms over here, so we're not in the loop cut tool anymore. Let's just do scale. And then select the bottom face and hit S on the keyboard and just scale that out a little bit so that it just flanges there a little bit. All right, so now we're going to go into the front view by hitting 1 on the number pad, and we're going to add in another cylinder that we're going to then turn into the main portion of the tree. So go to add, choose cylinder, and you're going to leave it at 6 vertices again, and we just want to hit the grab tool here, or the move tool. You can choose that here, or you can hit G on your keyboard and then Z to constrain to the Z axis, and from there you can move it up. You can even snap it using the control key, and we just want to put it on top of our stump here. So now we've got this big thing up top, and I think I want it to be a little bit taller, so I'm going to just select the top face, go into the front view by hitting 1 on the number pad, and then we're just going to extend that up. I think that's good. I think proportionally that looks pretty nice. We might even make it a little bit taller. Let's make it taller, actually. There we go. I think that's going to work well. All right, you can make it as tall or short as you like. I'm just sort of by my own eye. I think that looks good. So we want to get some more geometry going on here. We're going to add some loop cuts. So again, over here, click loop cut, and then we're going to put a loop cut through the middle, and we'll increase this to Yeah, like 5. 5 is probably good. I think that'll work. All right. So now that we have those loop cuts, we want to go back into one of these transforms, so we're not going to accidentally put another loop cut in. Go up to the face select and select the top face of this new cylinder. So we now have 2 meshes here in this one object, 2 connected meshes. If we want to select the entire cylinder or the entire stump, you just select one face and then hit Control L on the keyboard, and that's going to select all the linked faces there. So now you see I have the whole cylinder selected. We can do the same thing with the stump. Select one of those, Control L, and that selects all of the stump portion. So that's a way to be able to select connected or linked meshes that are all part of the same object. Select the top face on the new cylinder, and then tab back into object mode. And we're going to make a copy of this. So hit Shift D on the keyboard, and then Escape to cancel the free transform, and then just move over the copy. And so what we're going to want to do is we're going to make a bunch of these in order to see how this proportional editing tool here, the different fall-offs, will work. So we'll need to make a total of 8 copies. I would say you want to still keep the original just to have it there as a prototype for later if you wanted to make some more of these. So we'll need a total of 9 of these. So just Shift D to duplicate, and then just move it over and make it so you have 9. Okay, so now we've got our sort of 9 base meshes, and what we're going to do is just so we'll just grab the first one here, center up on it with the number pad period, and now we're going to go to work. Go into the edit mode with the top face selected, go up here to the proportional editing tool and click the button next to it to turn it on. I'll turn blue. Hit the drop down here. Make sure connected only is selected. This will apply these transformations only to the mesh that is connected. That's why I had you add a second cylinder to our mesh, so we don't affect the trunk with what we're doing here. The way this tool works is any transformation that we apply to what we have selected, the computer is going to apply a portion of that to surrounding faces or to surrounding vertices. And these different fall-off curves will determine how that will be applied. So we'll start with the smooth one, and then we'll go through the whole set and basically make a tree for each one and just sort of see which ones look the best. Okay, with the top face selected and the proportional editing tool turned on, hit S on your keyboard to scale, and you'll see that this gray circle appears. This is the area of effect. And if you scroll your mouse wheel, you can see that it will change how far out it is applying this transformation. And so what we want to do is we just want to get down to the bottom here so that we're just not affecting the very, very bottom vertices, and then just scale it in so we get this sort of cone shape. All right, and then hit Tab to go out of edit mode and select the next one. Then tab back into edit mode. And now we're going to want to select the next one down, the sphere. And then same thing, S to scale. And you might need to, you can see here it's pulling up a little too much on the bottom, so we're going to actually move our scroll wheel a little bit so that it doesn't do that. All right, and then just make it, and we don't want to go to a complete point, we do want a little bit of a face there on the top. That's going to be preferable to getting too small. You can see here there's a big difference in the way that the scaling is being applied by the tool to the object here. So we'll just keep going and do one for each one. And so as you can see, we're getting slightly different sort of tree shapes. They are all within sort of what I would consider to be a cartoon pine tree look, let's say. But they're all slightly different, so that's kind of neat. So let's do the next one. That one doesn't really seem that useful because you're losing a lot of the geometry in the tree itself, and it's all going into that top there. So that one's probably not too useful. All right. And then the last one here is the random. Try that out a little bit. And that's interesting. I mean, that's maybe that could be a tree that has a bunch of snow on it. Maybe this like sort of deformity here, that's a big snowpack on it. I don't know. But for sort of a standard pine tree, I don't think that's going to work for us. So these first 6 look really good for us. So let's go ahead and bring those over here. And what we're going to do is these guys here, we're just going to hide them for now. So over in the scene collection, you can just hide them by dragging on the eyeballs there. And we want to go ahead and just rename our trees here. And so we can go into this tab, which is the object info tab, and you can change the name there. So we'll name it Tree Pine Smooth. So that reminds us of which of the curves this was. So this one then was the second one down, which would be Sphere. So we'll go Tree Pine Sphere. And this one here is Root Tree. And what's next? Inverse square. Okay, so tree, pine, sharp. Then this one is tree, pine, linear. Okay. So that gives us all those. We could go rename those, but we're not going to use those for anything in our future tutorial if you wanted to do that. I've just got those hidden for now. So we want to set these as library assets. So go ahead and select all of them with Shift Select, then right click, go down to Mark as Asset. Then you'll see these little library books appear next to the name, and then we know that they are now going to be saved as assets that we'll be able to access through the asset browser for other Blender projects that we start. So I'm going to go up and say File Save, make sure that all gets saved. Now we want to go ahead and make some deciduous trees. So we're going to still use the same techniques we've been using. For this, we'll go ahead and start with one of the base models. So go ahead and turn the cylinder number 8 back on. Put the eye on for that. We're just going to go Shift Duplicate and then Escape to cancel the free move. And from here, we're going to go Shift S. Brings up this menu here. And what we want to do is we want to go Selection to Cursor, which will snap the duplicate to the 3D cursor here in the middle, because we're going to want to bring in some other objects to the mesh. So hit Tab to go in edit mode. Turn off the proportional editing tool by clicking that. Little blue button goes away. And what we want to do is we want to go Control L to select all the linked faces. And now we're going to delete those. Just hit delete on the keyboard and just hit vertices. That's fine. We just want to get rid of all of that. And we're back to having our little tree trunk here. We're now going to make this a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the top face there, hit the move tool, and we're going to just move it up. And we're going to make a nice taller trunk here. That's going to be pretty good, I think. Something about like that. We want to put in some more geometry with a loop cut. And this time, hold down the left mouse button when you click on it and just drag up. And you can see you can move where we're putting the loop cut in. And so what we want to do is just put a loop cut in about the same size as at the bottom there. You just want to eyeball it and get it about the same size, and then put in another one, do the same thing. All right, and let's do one more. That's good. All right, now out of the loop cut tool by selecting one of our transform gizmos. Let's move in, go into the face mode, and we're going to do something new here. We want to create a little more geometry on this top because we want to have some branches that sort of come out of our trunk and go up into the canopy of the tree. So to do that, we're going to use the knife tool that's just below the loop cut tool. Click on that. And what this is going to allow us to do is to cut new edges into this mesh. Go into vertex mode here in the vertex select. That's going to make things a little easier. Click on a vertex. You'll see it turns green. And now we've got this sort of yellowish anchor point and a line extending out with the green little dot there. And as you can see, when you drag it around, it will intersect with different lines and create more little green points, or if it hits the an established vertex, it turns yellow. And if you go off of it, you can actually draw lines outside of the mesh. So that just gives you a good feel of what you can do when you move around with this tool. So what we want to do here is just go across to the vertex on the other side. It'll sort of snap to it and turn yellow. And then you just click the left mouse button. And then it turns green, and now that becomes the pivot point. So now I want you to hit the right mouse button. And now that disconnects the knife tool from that last vertex. So now you can start a new cut somewhere else. So find another vertex there and snap to it. Click and drag across and connect it to the one right across from it. Same thing, once you've done that cut, right click to free it up and then put the last one in. And then once you're done and you want to accept your cut, you're going to hit spacebar, and then that cuts the faces. So then we don't need the knife tool anymore, so we're going to go back into the move tool. We want to select the face select, and then make sure all of those faces on the top are selected. Go up to face, and then down to extrude individual faces. And so what this is going to do is it's going to extrude each face as its own individual thing. So I'm going to hit escape on the keyboard just to cancel that free transform. And now I'm going to go up and I'm going to select for the transform pivot point, I'm going to select the individual origins. So now we're going to scale. And as you can see, each of those faces is sort of detached as its own thing. The normal extrude, if you hit E on the keyboard, will turn that whole thing into a single object that we're moving up. This way, with the extrude individual faces, each face gets extruded by itself rather than the whole thing be extruded as one. So what we're going to do here is we're going to move these guys up a little bit. Then we're going to scale them in. And then we're going to change our pivot point again to bounding box center. And so now it'll use the center of everything that's selected. And when we scale, they all sort of move away from there. And we can sort of get them looking like there are little branches coming off, splitting off of our trunk. Let's move it up, and we're just going to go S to scale. And then as you can see with the bounding box, as we scale, they sort of taper out. And that's not something that we really want. We'd actually prefer if they taper in a little bit. So go back up to the pivot point and choose that individual origins again. Hit S, and we'll scale them down to something like that. All right. Probably, from my experience, wanted about 45-degree angle coming off of there is pretty good. So that should work for us. Now we need to put in the canopy with the leaves. So to do that, you're going to go up to Add, and then down to the icosphere. And then you're going to put in one extra subdivision. So it normally does 2. We want 3 total. So there we go. And now grab it on the Z-axis, drag it up. We're going to need to make it bigger. So S to scale. And then we want to do something like about like that. That's pretty good. Now, it is just a sphere at this point. It's not terrible, but it's not great. We can actually make it better because this now we would have one of these, and we have 6 variations of our pine tree, but only one of our deciduous trees. So we want to make this something that we can do to add variation to these so that when we have a whole bunch of them in a scene together, it's not obvious that it's just one tree duplicated over and over again. If we have 5 or 6 of them, then you can sort of randomly position them in such a way that they sort of blend together and become more like a forest, rather than just one tree duplicated over and over again. So in order to do that, we want to make a bunch of copies of this, so we'll want to make sort of a prefab to work from. So let's make a bunch of copies. So Shift D to duplicate, and we'll want 6 copies just to sort of line up with our 6 pine trees. Let's move this guy over, and we'll make 1 extra just to hold on to in case we want to make some more later. Now, if I remember, there were a few trees there. Let's just move these guys down to make it a little easier to work with. Okay. So now that we've got our 6 sort of base trees here, select the first one, and we're going to go into edit mode by hitting tab, and then we're going to go up to the vertex select, and you're going to want to select a couple of the vertices around, just sort of randomly around your icosphere. That looks pretty good. Make sure the proportional editing tool is turned on and that you have the random selected, and then you're going to hit S to scale, and we're going to just scale that in a little bit, and you can see if you scroll your mouse wheel that you can get this randomized sort of noise pattern on the sphere there that is going to get it so that we can make some sort of unique looking trees. I find that doing just one on the top here and sort of squishing it down a little bit tends to be a good look and get rid of some of that perfect symmetry of the sphere. We just want to distort it enough so that it doesn't just look like a sphere. So I think that's pretty good for the first one. So we go on to the next one and just do it again. Just randomly select a few points. Something like this. You know, a couple on each side, a couple low, a couple high, and then just S to scale and scroll the mouse wheel until you get sort of a pattern that looks good to you. That looks nice. Okay, so you'll do that, just, you know, do that a couple times. Let's do the thing on the top here with this one. We'll grab a couple of them and we'll sort of smush those down a little bit. That looks pretty cool. All right, so you get the point there. So you're going to do that for each of these. And if you don't like it, you can always undo. But play around with you know, sort of different selection patterns and just try some different stuff. As Bob Ross would say, this is your world. There are no mistakes. Just happy little trees. Okay, so there we go. So we'll go ahead and, now we've got those made, let's go ahead and just rename our trees. Tree A. Yeah, we'll just do trees and letters. Almost forgot my alphabet there for a second. So we can go ahead and hide these guys again. We don't need them at the moment. Just save, and again we're going to select all of our trees, but this time just do a drag select on the with the mouse, and you can select all of them on screen, and then right click, mark as asset, and now they have the library books icons on their names. So now they are added to the asset library. Go up and save, and we are ready to move forward. So now we just want to add some materials on here real quick, just to finish out this episode of the tutorial. So select one of your pine trees, and you're going to follow the same process for the entire set of trees. And we're going to tab in edit mode. We're going to hit, we're going to go into the face mode, or select one of the faces on the tree, and go down to the materials tab, hit new, and we're going to call this green. And then we're going to hit the plus sign here to add a new slot and a new material again. Change that to brown. And now actually go down and set the color. So change the green over to green. Let's darken that up. That's a little too bright. That's pretty good. And scroll down. And we're just going to bring the roughness up so that it doesn't have those weird reflections. And now select one of the faces of the trunk. Hit Control L to select the entire trunk. Select the brown material in the material stack. Click Assign. And now we can switch that over to brown. And brown is really just a dark orange most of the time, or sort of a dark orange red. A lot of times works well as a brown. Okay, so now if we hit tab to go out of edit mode, there we go, hit the period on the numpad to rotate around. Let's bring the roughness on our brown up a bit. That's pretty good there. About 0.75, I think it works. All right, so, and then you just want to go to each of these guys and assign some materials. So we'll set the green. And then we want to just do the select, Control L, add another slot, assign, and then select that for our brown. And so then once you've got, you can do the same thing with our deciduous trees. We want to select the entire tree, add a material, green, add a new material slot, that will be brown, select one of the faces of the trunk, Control L to select the linked faces, brown, assign, tab to go out of edit mode back into object mode, click somewhere else on the screen, and there you have some trees. So go ahead and apply those materials to all of the trees in your set. Whatever. So as you can see here, this gives us a nice little set of low poly trees. So that'll do it for part 2. In part 3 of this tutorial series, we are going to make some basic objects like rocks, chairs, tables, and a few other things. If you enjoyed this tutorial, I have other tutorials in the works, so hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on them. And if you really like this tutorial, in the description, there is a link to my Patreon. So head on over there, and my supporters get exclusive asset packs and other cool stuff I have made over the years for animation, VFX, video production, Dungeons & Dragons, all sorts of stuff. Alrighty, thanks for watching. Cheers.